Okay, so the final point here is we've got all our data, we've scored it, we've got all these great columns, 75 columns worth of data, and you look out and try to find an analyst who wants to work with any of those. It's rare. Mostly you're going to be working with like 5 or 6, to be honest. Again, you're not interested in what's going on with Axis 1 or Axis 3. I'm not interested in what's going on with total count. A lot of this is extraneous stuff. But to export it into a usable file, you export it to Excel. And we have found that tends to be the most reliable way that then can be read by multiple analysis packages, R, SAS, SPSS. They can all import it and use it and match on ID with all the other clinical variable you have. So let's say, okay, I do want to export this. My analyst is going to help me, but I don't want to send him or her a file with 80 columns in it. So if you go into, so on the top of the scoring tab here, you go into edit columns. This is where you can click and say, this is what I want. I will say you always want calendar days and you always want time. Anything else is completely up to what your research question is. And it can be as detailed or as aggregated as you want. Oh, yeah, that's fair. Okay, the consideration of time. Yes, so if you did highlight all 75 of those columns, you're probably talking about a couple of hours to score all of that stuff and export it. So that's not a small consideration either. I should point that out. So when you export this data, I'd like you guys to all go ahead and do that. So if you haven't done it yet, if you could check all 3 boxes, choose whatever algorithms you want, and go ahead and click Calculate. So I just want to make sure you have a couple columns of data for a couple different files. And if you click Export here, this is not the outcomes. This is how the level of detail that you're going to get about those outcomes. So again, it will always be a CSV file. Summary breakdown is for the whole data set. So basically what this screen is showing you is what it will present. You can break it down by day per patient. You can break it down by hour per patient, by bout. Again, I rarely ever have those checked unless I'm interested in doing time of day analyses. Warranted. Same thing, sedentary, are you all about that? Wear time validation, I usually don't, but this is the option where if you're not into doing the screenshots of what I did for wear time, this will be the screen that tells you, Catherine, remember you did CHOI, a 90, 32, whatever. And that can be your methods section. So that's a nice thing to include here. Always include the header definition because that's basically your grail of interpreting what these outcomes are. And yeah, that'll do it. So if you click export there, it'll make you select a place to save it. Okay. Can folks get through that? Did it take like 2 seconds? I want you to go in there and add hourly and bout and export. And then you'll see it takes considerably more time for just 12 files. Okay, but let's find out where those went. So if we look at what we exported, see we've got all these files now. I want summary. So here you see this is basically our scoring tab from the software. All that data that we were looking at is now here in Excel. look at variables, again, this is my scoring metric, so this is my code for what I did to this data, how I processed it. And then you can get into the hourly, listed by ID number, going hour by hour, day of the week, and having that detailed data. So you can see, again, the software is great to have, but it's not the final step. This is the necessary final step to actually work with your data. Okay. Yes, so depending on the size, the number of variables, and the number of files, it can take anywhere from 10 seconds, a minute, to 2 hours if you have upwards of 500 or 1,000 data files. And obviously working on a hard line versus a wireless connection is ideal for getting that stuff done. I mentioned the kind of variables that I tend to calculate. There's some other calculations that I do on the back end, so within the Excel sheet before I send it over to the analyst, and that's calculating average daily steps. So if you look in your score sheet, it tends to, well, it will give you step counts. So total step counts over the 7 days. It'll give you the average step counts, but that's not step counts per day, that's per minute. Then the max counts per minute. Again, the average counts per minute. So you need to take this step counts divided by the number of calendar days to give you average daily steps. And that's a calculation. And again, if you don't export your wear time sheet, you can also just calculate average daily wear time as the time that they wore it divided by the calendar days. So sometimes it's easier just to do the calculations than to combine multiple data sheets. Okay, so I've already talked about it's not the final step. A lot of novel post-processing analytic approaches are under development that I've kind of peppered in throughout our conversation here that characterize activity intensity, duration, and frequency completely agnostic to counts per minute. So again, this is really trying to just harness the data and let the data tell us what the forms are, the functional forms, the trends. So we're talking about kind of great statistical approaches like functional data analysis, machine learning, since this is really big data, it can do ginormous data with lots of patients. We also have some people doing work about individualizing cut points based on someone's functional status. So having someone perform a 400-meter walk and taking that data based on their gait speed and putting that in to help you choose the cut points. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. But again, that's all work in progress, so none of that is going to help you at this point with processing and scoring your data. We're still beholden to the Actilife software to really make it manageable. And I mentioned the multiple processing. Yeah, I already talked about imputation. Okay, so hopefully I've given you some concept of how nuanced this can be and the various considerations that we take into account. So it's not just point and click, but to a degree, once you become comfortable with the patient group and what's out there in the literature, it can become much more efficient. And as Kevin mentioned before, there are a variety of outcomes or issues that we take into consideration to determine which algorithms, if any, you choose. And so here are the kind of top 3 that I think we've all discussed before. And then just want to make you aware of other resources available, whether on campus or online. So obviously the Duke Pepper Center, we have a core devoted to measurement. We're interested in moving this type of work forward, so if that's something you're really keen in, please connect with us. I would also say that the Actigraph company has a great support center. So they have manuals, they have tutorials, they have a great, very responsive customer support center. So if you get in there and you realize, I'm trying to figure out this nuanced approach, they're a great person, a great resource to reach out to.